Today, I'm going to show you an automation that uses AI to automatically analyze your blog post images to gain new insights and information automatically. All you'll have to do is copy and paste the URL from the article into this Airtable base, and it will automatically generate suggestions and new content that it thinks is missing from the articles based on what the AI sees in the images. This can give your content a competitive edge because it's adding content that might not be present on other websites, which could give you a higher chance of ranking well on Google, as well as being more helpful for readers. I got this idea from Jared Bauman, who runs Weekend Growth. He's also the great host of the Niche Pursuits podcast. He released a video with this idea, and I'm taking it a step further by automating the process. I'm going to start from the very start of this process, but beforehand I'll explain everything at a high level. I'm using make.com to build out this automation visually. And by the way, if you want access to the make.com blueprints so you can import this automation at the click of a button, then check out the link in the description where you can get access to all of our automations, including this one. At a high level, this is broken down into two different steps. The first step is where it goes through the status of open. So what you do is copy and paste in a URL into this field, then automatically, by default, the status is open. Then the system will go and fetch the content of that article. It will then extract the images of the article using these modules, and then it passes all of those to this pretty long prompt. And what it's doing is it's asking it to suggest new information and insights to add to the article, and it's passing a bunch of images from the article in a particular format. I'll explain how all that's done later. Then when that's done, it updates the record. So it'll update this suggestions part of the record, for example here, and then you can go through and decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to ignore. In some cases, there might be some irrelevant images, or the AI might come up with suggestions that just really are kind of not relevant to what you want. So this kind of offers a bit of control over what you want. You can also update the suggestions with some more information. Then when you're ready to move to the next stage, you move it to generate new paragraphs status. And then when the automation runs again, it will go through this flow. It will then write the new sections of the article and try and match the existing tone of the article. And then we'll update the record. And then you'll have new content generated that you can copy and paste into your article or update as you see fit. Let's start from the start. I'm going to explain the data structure that I have in Airtable here. We just have a post URL field, which is just a standard field, a long text suggestions field, status of, this is the drop-down list where I have status of open, which is default, images analyzed, generate new paragraphs, and new content generated. I have a new content field, which is a long text, existing article, which is a long text, and we have this last modified field, which is a date time, which is needed. Once you have that Airtable base set up, go into make.com, add in a new module and type Airtable. And we're going to say watch records. If you do not have a connection, then click add, and then you just have to go through an authentication process. I've selected my base here. I'm going to select table 1. Trigger field is down as last modified. So you need to have a date time field over here, which is last modified, and just put it down as a last modified time. Then it will only fetch rows that have been updated. So we're going to do label field last modified. That's all okay for now. We can leave that as it is. At the moment, this will run on a scheduled basis or whenever we click the run once button. We can set this up so that it can instantly trigger. So we could add buttons from here, or we could add in a script so that it automatically triggers whenever a field has been updated. We're covering that in a later video. For now, you can run this by clicking the run once button whenever you want, or by setting it to run the scenario at regular intervals. We're just going to use this article as an example and copy and paste that into the post URL field. Now we're just going to click the run once button and see what it comes out with. So it's taken that, it has the post URL. So that's good. Next, we're then going to go through the flow to create the suggestions for the articles. We could just use the regular HTTP module in this and then crawl the website directly, but the result will be quite messy, way too much code, and will be difficult to work with. It's better to use an external crawling service. We're going to use a service called Firecrawl in this case. This service will make it a lot easier to go through this process, and you'll see why in a few minutes. Generally, when I'm recommending services, I try to pick ones that are either free or really cheap, and this one fits the bill. The free plan gets you 500 credits, scrape 500 pages. So just start with the free plan, get started and sign up. When you create your account, you'll see this API key on the right. Just copy that out by pressing the copy code button. You'll use this URL, just copy and paste in this URL here. I'll just zoom in, firecrawl.dev/v0/scrape. You'll use the post method, and then you need to add in your API key here. Unfortunately, Firecrawl is not a native module in make.com, but you can quite easily make a request to the API using this HTTP module. So just type in authorization and then value. What to do is type bearer space and then copy out the code and paste it in there. Then select body type raw, content type JSON, and then copy and paste in this JSON format. You basically need to just select the post URL. That's the post URL from the Airtable field here. There's a few really interesting points here. Only main content is true. That means it's going to exclude all of the other parts of the page. Very, very useful. Makes it a lot cleaner, and include HTML. So we need to make sure we have these settings like so, and then parse the response of yes, then press OK. Now we're going to go back and run that again. If we click run once, it won't work because this is only watching for updates to records. So we're going to choose where to start and select all, press OK, and now run once and see what happens. Okay, so in the response, we can see status code equals 200, which is good, and the data success true, and so we're looking good. Okay, next up, probably what you would do if you were doing this from scratch is to try and open up an OpenAI module here and to analyze images using Vision. We're going to use GPT-4o. What we can do here is we can pass a prompt directly to OpenAI as well as provide some images. It's the same as ChatGPT in that you can just drag in images into the ChatGPT box and then add a prompt. However, in this case, instead of adding images one by one, we want to map them based on what we see from the article. So you need to provide the data in this specific format. We're going to provide it in this format, which is to provide the image URLs. OpenAI will then grab those images directly instead of us having to upload the binary data ourselves. But unfortunately, there are some more steps we need to do in the middle of this to get it into the right format. So in between this, we're going to add in a new module and add OpenAI again and create a chat completion prompt. We're going to choose GPT-4o. We need to choose a system role, which is to provide the overall context for what we wanted to do. I've added in this system role. If you're not very technical, just bear with me for a minute as I'll explain this. You can just copy and paste it in if you're not fully sure, or else just grab the blueprint for this scenario, which is linked in the description. What I'm doing here is I'm getting GPT-4 to analyze the HTML and return a JSON list. This is the format that we're going to be passing into the API at that later step, the later image step. We're getting the AI to analyze the content of the article and to actually construct the JSON in the correct format. It's pretty nice. If you're a developer, you might be wondering, why is this wrapped in a JSON object of URLs? And the reason is that from what I can see, ChatGPT or GPT-4 only responds in a single JSON object. You cannot respond in an array of objects. This is a workaround where you wrap this array of objects into this object. It's totally fine if you don't get that fully. Next up, we need to add a user role, which is we're going to pass the data that we wanted to work with. We're going to go to data, then we're going to select the HTML of the article. This is actually only the HTML of the main content of the article. You might think otherwise by looking at this doc type, but that's not the case. We're going to select max tokens of 0 to use the limit of the model. And very importantly, go down to show advanced settings and select response format JSON. We really want this to respond in a correct JSON format. And then we're going to select OK. Okay, we're going to unlink that for the moment and then test this to make sure it works. I'm going to save. Going to choose where to start, which is all again, and run once. Okay, that's now completed, and let's see what the result is. It responded in this particular JSON format, which is what we want. And now there are a lot of images here. Next up, we're going to use another, we will rename that to extract images. Next up, we're going to link that with another OpenAI module, create a chat completion. And we're going to rename that to filter images. We're going to select GPT-4o, another system or system role to make sure that we set the context for what we wanted to do. And you are a helpful assistant, only include images with the following formats. So we're making sure that it's only including the images with those formats. In this case, we're getting it to output a max of 8 images. If you output many more, you may not get great results in the analysis phase after this. You can play around with that however way you want and respond in the exact same JSON format. Very important. Go to advanced settings, make sure that you select JSON object. That's really important. Now under message content, I'll just select the result from the previous run, the previous extract images. And you see module 4 links with module 4 here. Max tokens of 0 to use the limit of the model. Press save and we'll run the whole thing again. Choose where to start, select all and run once. Right, so that's done, and let's make sure it's in the correct format. It's condensed the list down to what we want and excluded certain unnecessary images. So that's looking good. Next up, we're going to type JSON and then parse that JSON. I'm going to select result. So this is, make sure you're matching the correct module, which is number 5 here, to number 5. I'll select the result of that and press OK. Oops. Then I'm going to link that with this. Next up, we need to initially send in some data into this parse JSON module, just so make.com interprets what's meant to be in there, so we can pass it into this later. There are quicker ways of doing this, but just to keep things relatively simple, I'm going to just run the scenario again. However, you cannot end a scenario in a JSON module like so. So I'll just set up a filter here which cannot be passed. And then that's just kind of like a way of unlinking these modules. You'll see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go to choose where to start, select all, and then run once again. All right, so that is done. And now we have a JSON structure as we want, as you see there. And it has not crossed this filter, so it's like a way of unlinking them. We're going to remove this filter again now that we've done that. And now we're going to open the Analyze Images part. Now I've copied in this pretty long prompt. What we have is you were provided an article text and current images within that article. Please suggest data, information, and insights from the images that can be used as the basis for new sections and information within the article. Be detailed about what the images contain and describe them. Then also have another bunch of directions here. You can pause the video if you want to see it in more detail. Next up, you just select this URLs. By the way, it might look like we have incorrect data here. URL is actually the current expected value from that OpenAI wants here. The documentation here is actually out of date. Took me a bit of time to realize what the problem was there. Then select model GPT-4o and 300. Then next stage, which is a kind of a simple enough one, so I'll do both of these together, is to update a record. I've selected the base, select table 1. Record ID, I'll scroll down to the initial ID from the Airtable Watch Records module. And then status, I see here we have images analyzed. So once this process is finished, we want the status to be updated to images analyzed. And the suggestions will be the result of this. See, this will populate this field here. And the existing article, anything blank will not be updated. So I'll press OK. Right, so that's the first flow done. Let's run that again, make sure it works. Choose where to start, select all, I'll press run once. All right, I actually got an error when I tried to run this with max tokens of 0. We need to select a limit, token limit. So I'm just going to put in 4096 max tokens and try to run that again. So I'll just press run once. So that is nearly done, and it will then update the Airtable record. Okay, that's done, and let's go into Airtable. Okay, so this is looking really good. It's telling us what image it got the data from. Then secondly, it's saying it's found some information on this Arthur's Seat map section around the green route, red route, yellow route, and so on. This is really good information. It's mentioning about an experience of hiking with kids. So this is really good. Now you can edit that however way you want. You could delete stuff that you don't really want. You could add in extra information as you see fit. And then in the next section, we're going to get this to generate the new content. You could, however, just skip the second step entirely and just get it to generate the new content directly in there. That's fine. You would just need to update the prompt a little bit. But not all of the results are going to be as good as this, especially if you have kind of more generic images within the article. You might still want to have this second step before getting it to generate the new content. That's completely up to you. But let's say that we're continuing with this two-step process. We then add a router in here, then add a new module. I'm going to select auto align just to clean things up a bit. I'm going to click shift and then move those out. Next, we're going to select a filter. We only want it to go up to this section when the status is open, and we want it to go on to this route when it's on status of generate new paragraphs. So click on this filter, just write status of open. I'm going to select status and type open. Now just make sure that the case and all that is correct. Open looks good there. Generate new paragraphs. Okay, so the next status is set up a filter and status generate new paragraphs. Is that generate new paragraphs? Okay, that looks good. And press OK. Then we're going to add OpenAI chat completion. I'm going to select GPT-4o, another system role as usual. In this case, I'm saying you are an experienced content writer responsible for enhancing existing articles by adding new sections based on the provided suggestions. And I've just provided some extra information there. You can pause the video if you want to see more. And just some extra stuff about not disclosing, knowledge cutoffs, and usual AI giveaways. Next up, write in user, and then we have, I'm just going to copy and paste this in because there is quite a lot there. So I have an existing article. I need to expand it by adding new sections based on the suggestions below. Please write these sections matching the tone and writing style of the existing article. Again, I'm expanding on this a bit more. You can pause the video if you want to look at that in more detail. Now, suggestions, we're going to take the suggestions from the Airtable record, and the article is the existing article. We'll go max tokens of 0 and press OK. Instead of running this multiple times, I'm just going to now select the Airtable, update a record. In fact, I will actually clone this module up here. Right-click, clone, drag that down, and we'll keep those blank. And new content will be the result of this. And I'll update the status to new content generated. New content generated. And press OK. Now I'm going to just, let's say that this is all good for me, except I don't want to include maybe this last section or this section as well. And I'll click run once. Whoops, sorry. I need to change that to new, or to generate new paragraphs. And then select run once. Now it's gone down to this route. It's ignored this route as expected. Okay, so that's been updated, and you can see it's been updated here, and it's a bit more suitable to what you could just copy and paste directly into the article. You can play around with the prompting here. You could use something like Anthropic Claude instead if you want to get a different kind of style of writing. That's up to you, but overall I think this is a pretty good result. Now you can do this for as many articles as you want. You could copy and paste in hundreds of these articles. It will create all the suggestions, create all the content by itself. Of course, this approach will not work for every niche or industry, particularly if you have a lot of stock photography or generic images. But it would be great for certain niches like travel or certain types of electronics, or any kind of niches which have a lot of interesting insights or information embedded within the images, like illustrations, diagrams, and so on. If you want access to the make.com blueprints so you can import this automation at the click of a button, then check out the link in the description to our community. Thanks for watching.